Hi, everybody, and happy Thursday? I don't even know what day it is. I'm meteorologist Brittany Van Voorhees, and welcome to WCNC Charlotte's live weather impact right here on WCNC Plus. I hope if you were out and about late last night, you were able to get another view of the aurora of the Northern Lights. We did see some color. It was faint, but some color nonetheless on our Dallas Tower cam, and did get really gorgeous photos from a lot of our viewers. So thanks again for sending those in. A different kind of beautiful light show, I think, in the night sky tonight. Our sunset happened just about an hour or so ago, and because of a lot of high clouds out there, we had a really vibrant sunrise and sunset. But that is not how we're going to start today's show. We're actually going to start it with the one and only U.S. Drought Monitor. I know we show this all the time. And actually, I said during our regular newscast, I feel a little bit sick of talking about it, but we have to talk about it, right? We are still under drought conditions here in the Carolinas. But what's interesting about this update is even though we haven't seen a lot of rain, notice where the change has happened. Was it really hard to see? Well, that's because it was intentionally hard to see. It's a tiny, tiny little sliver there on the southern tip of South Carolina. Otherwise, we really didn't see a lot of substantial changes. Now, you can look at this in a good way or a bad way. The good news is that we didn't see the drought expand. The bad news is we're still under drought conditions, and we do still need more rain to help with this current situation. Our average for the month of November up to November 13th is about 1.5 inches, just under 1.5 inches. And so far, we've only had 1/4 inch. Well, on average this time of year in Charlotte, we see about 3 inches or so. So not only are we below where we should be, but we already know we're not going to see a lot of rain in general on average. So this is the time of year where we need some of those days. Remember that trend back in late October where it was Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and I know it was cloudy and cool, but we saw some areas of drizzle, some light rain off and on. We need more stretches like that, truthfully, if we're ever going to get out of this drought situation. Across the Carolinas, it's not just here locally in the Piedmont, but it's most of the southeast. Notice the rainfall forecast the next 7 days. Georgia looks dry, the Carolinas looks dry all the way down to Florida, and even those areas in Alabama, Mississippi, up toward Virginia. That sea rain, it's not going to be much. We see a big swath there on the western side of the country, a little bit of rainfall action there in Arizona, but really the worst is there you can see from Dallas stretching all the way into St. Louis and southern parts of Illinois. Now, in the Charlotte area right now, I looked at the numbers right before our newscast started, we would need about 4 to 5 inches of rain in a month to get back to normal or out of drought conditions, but within 3 months we would need about 10 to 12. So it's possible, it's just that going into the winter months we're in a La Nina, and normally with those patterns we're drier than normal and we're warmer than normal. So at least the overall winter pattern does not set us up for success when it comes to seeing more rain. But again, you never know, just because the winter itself is warmer and drier doesn't mean you don't get a little bit of rain or 1 or 2 cold snaps. Here's current satellite and radar. Things are looking fantastic. We have some high clouds mixing in. Those high clouds are going to clear out just in time to see cooler temps tonight. Remember, clouds act like a blanket, keeping us a little bit warmer at night, but when they clear out, we get cold air that can settle closer to the ground because the wind's not mixing as much. And with that being said, temperatures tonight, upper 30s. Won't be nearly as cold as Tuesday morning, but won't be nearly as nice as this morning. So few areas of patchy frost, likely outside of the Charlotte metro. But again, it's not going to be a big issue for you tomorrow morning. I don't think we're going to need to warm up the car for multiple minutes, 30 minutes, but maybe 1 or 2. Tomorrow afternoon, pretty much a rinse repeat forecast of today, mostly clear. Mostly sunny, temperatures near 70. I think the biggest change will be up in our mountain communities due to that southwesterly wind. We'll actually be in the lower 60s versus where we were today, which was the lower 50s. Now, meteorologist Chris Mulcahy made this graphic, and I know it's a little bit complicated, and I used it on air. It's probably a little bit too much for TV, but I think it is great for digital and for WCNC Plus because you can kind of see the layout a little bit better. So this is what it felt like the last 10 days compared to normal. You oftentimes hear us talk about, today felt more like late June or, whatever the date is. Where are we with what it felt like? Well, this time last week, we were pretty much around the same numbers, upper 60s, low 70s. So right at the end of October, we kind of ebbed and flowed there until Sunday, where we got into the upper 70s, which is more like late September. And then we saw that big crash, right? Monday and Tuesday, both afternoons, we were January, if not even colder, because our average high actually never drops below 50 degrees here in Charlotte. And then today we were pretty mild. Yesterday pretty mild as well, so pretty much where we should be. Well, does that bode differently for the rest of the week? Well, not necessarily. Just because we've been colder or been warmer doesn't mean that's going to stay the same. But in this case, we're going to be a little bit warmer. Today, the official high was 70. Tomorrow, right around the same. And then we're in the mid 70s Saturday and the upper 70s by Sunday. In fact, it's probably going to be pretty similar to last weekend where we had sunshine mid to upper 70s, because if you look there, pretty much exactly what we had last weekend, 74, 77 respectively. So will we see rain? Not really anticipating a big chance of rain on Sunday, but there will be a weak cold front passing by, which could allow for a few showers in the mountains. Not expecting that across the Piedmont. Now, I know it is going to be warmer this weekend. Again, some spots near 80, but if you have not been able to get out and about and just kind of enjoy the fact that it's fall, could be a good weekend to do so. We are at our peak levels, if not past peak, across portions of the Piedmont and down toward the Sandhills, which means everywhere else is past peak as well. And with some of those windy days we've had recently, there are a lot of leaves on the ground, but that does not mean that we can't still see some nice days to enjoy some of that fall color. So again, it's not going to be a lot of mess outside, so definitely get out and enjoy if you can. In the long range, it does look like we could see some areas of rain here and there, but again, you'll see in that 7 to 10 day forecast, it certainly does not look like a lot of rain by any stretch of the imagination. So tomorrow morning, probably going to be our chilliest over the next week, upper 30s, lots of sunshine in the afternoon, a gorgeous weekend. The 49ers play on Saturday. With that cold front coming in Sunday, again, we get a little weak area of cooler and drier air coming in Monday, Tuesday, but notice these numbers compared to those averages at the bottom of your screen. Even when we get cooler, quote unquote cooler early next week, it is still going to be at or above average for this time of year. And I'll give you a little tease of the extended forecast in case you're not going to be up at 11 o'clock, which we do normally show this at 11 p.m. We're looking at more at or above average temperatures over the next 10 days. So no more snow, no more little surprise bursts of snow, no more substantial cold here in the Charlotte area, at least through the weekend before Thanksgiving. But again, that does not mean that in the long range that cannot change. So of course, we'll continue to keep you updated locally, especially as we get closer to those Thanksgiving trends. It's hard to believe, just about 2 weeks or so away. For now, we're going to go to a 2-minute break, and then we'll bring in Chief Meteorologist Tim Buckley from WFMY, and we'll chat more about how this week has shaped up and what's to come. We'll be right back. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to WCNC Plus and WFMY Plus. I'm meteorologist Brittany Van Voorhees, joined by Tim Buckley. Tim, I feel like I haven't seen your face in so long.
Well, we were supposed to see each other, sometime last week, and then something happened. Maybe Brad got off or I got off. I don't know. One of those things happened. Typically, it's the Tim and Brittany show on Fridays. That's what I'm used to.
It was actually me. I was not
You were
here.
off.
Yeah, I was in
That explains it.
I was in Florida for a wedding. It was 85 and muggy until that cold front came in. So I got off the plane in Fort Myers and was like, oh my gosh, send me back to Charlotte immediately. But then with the cool down, they were essentially where we have been. So we had a low of 43. So all the Floridians looked like they were going to, freeze to death. And I was just like, la-di-da, this is where we have been in Charlotte. So.
Were you in the region that had the warnings for falling iguanas? Were you south enough where that was a bit of an issue?
Yes. So essentially in South Florida, so I lived in Southwest Florida in Fort Myers for about 3 years. Anytime you're in South Florida and it's 50 or lower, that's when they start to get less active. And anything 45 degrees or lower, that's when they start to be paralyzed. The biggest issue is that, which you probably know this. Yeah, I guess maybe not. Maybe this is not a normal thing that people know. But the iguanas are largely invasive. And so there's times of the year where they're you can just kill them, which I think is a little bit crazy, but that's a different story for a different day. But people assume sometimes when they're paralyzed because of the cold that they're dead, but they're not. They essentially will wake back up once the temperatures get warm. So don't get too close, peeps, if you're ever going to Florida around this time of year. I was also reminded why I moved to Charlotte.
And these things are everywhere. I mean, man. Because no iguanas in Charlotte.
No, it's okay. This is just going to turn into just me chit-chatting about random stuff. But so one of my biggest pain points, so my parents live in Central Florida, but it does get cold there. But one of my biggest pain points about living in South Florida is that in the 3 years that I lived in Fort Myers, the temperature never dropped below 39. It was at the longest stretch they had of not seeing freezing temperatures. And so when it never gets cold like that, the bugs never die. And so it's January, and I'm very sensitive to mosquito bites. And I'm getting bit on my face, taking Roger, my dog, out to go to the bathroom, at 3 o'clock before my morning shift. And my face is blowing up with mosquito bites. And I'm it's January. These things are supposed to be dormant.
So maybe we need to get a bug guy on or a bug expert, because I'm a little curious about our recent cold snap. All I know is that it got cold enough to freeze, right? So we're in the 20s for lows. How many bugs did that kill? Or what are we still going to see mosquitoes and everything over the next couple of weeks, or are they mostly gone away? I feel like Brad would know this just because he's a geek when it comes to every topic. But for me, it's a little
Becca,
bit more
actually, that was her weather
let me
IQ
ask somebody.
This week. Yeah, that was Becca's weather IQ this week.
Oh,
I guess we
so
should
what
probably
did we
run
find
it
out?
Tomorrow. Wait, okay, so I wasn't here, and so I only half listened to it because I wasn't here. But I know that it was something about how they don't die as quickly as you think so. I think it takes a few times.
Right.
Okay, so it says that
sounds right to me, because to me, you can stand.
Okay, so I'm not going to give you the whole entire story because I don't want to, ruin the tease for tomorrow. But they can start to slow down. I think this is interesting as soon as the temperature is 55. So.
And so that all makes sense. But we would like to see. I want to see the yellow jackets go. I want to see the mosquitoes go. All of those things slowing down would be a quality of life boost for us.
Okay, random stat about me. So I've never been stung by a bee or a yellow jacket or a wasp or anything. So I get really, really stressed when I see one because I know I'd be fine. It's just the anticipation that's never happened. And when Brad and I were playing golf for a charity golf tournament 2 weeks ago, one of the Mondays that you had Becca that was with you, we were playing in that for charity for South Charlotte Dog Rescue, and there was a hornet or yellow jacket flying around, and he was just looking at me like I was crazy because I was kept running away. I was like, sorry, just one of my little weird things about me. So.
It's kind of like a dog. If you run, it's just going to encourage them to chase you even more.
100%. I think also when I was on the swim team as a kid, they said don't run away from the bees because it makes them want to chase you, and I just still did it anyway because I'm just scared. So anyway, I guess we should start talking about the weather.
Yes. The Tim and
all right.
Brittany hour has begun. We don't have a lot to talk about when it comes to exciting weather, right? So there are a couple of focal points that we could go. We could go with drought or dry weather. We could talk about temperatures typically cooling in November, but maybe we're actually going to be warming up the next couple of weeks. I'm not sure where you want to start out.
You want to talk about drought just to kind of, because we've talked about it every single Thursday, just to kind of get it over with, and we can talk about more fun things.
Thursday is drought day. New numbers
Thursday
every
is drought
Thursday.
day.
But what I thought was interesting today is that the new the new numbers were the same as the old numbers. So they really didn't change a lick today in North or South Carolina. Really, it was basically about the same.
Which surprised me, Tim. You have to tell me what you think, because at least in Charlotte, I looked at some of our numbers. So we've only seen about a quarter inch of rain so far this month, and I know it's only 13 days in, but that's almost half, and we're normally about an inch and a half, so we're like an inch and a quarter below. So I was just surprised because by the fact that it didn't grow. I mean, it's not necessarily a bad thing, and I know it's not just about rain. You know, they look at soil moisture and, you know, transpiration and what things are supposed to be this time of year, and we're supposed to be dry. But I just thought it was interesting that we didn't see any change really, other than that tiny sliver in southern South Carolina.
Yeah, it's a good point. You know, we've not had hardly any rain either. We've only had a quarter of an inch up here in Greensboro. And, you know, you think about it, we're about halfway through the month. So today's the 13th. You know, we always talk about how fast time flies, but November's about halfway over. And we've still not really accumulated hardly any rainfall. So drought can kind of build on itself. It's been an issue for months. I think it'll probably continue to be an issue for months, it looks like, and maybe not any big signs of improvement down the road.
Yeah, and at least as we get closer to the holidays and then early, you know, next year, because we know inevitably it's going to be so dry. And already we're starting to see, obviously, like the color, you know, peak colors happen. But, you know, with these, you know, windy days, you know, you've seen the leaves falling, people are, you know, raking, you see all that now. I think my concern long term is that as we get closer to fire season, if we're already drier than normal and the leaves are already all over the ground, and then we have the classic La Nina setup, which is more windy days because more severe weather chances, not a lot of rain, and then more warmth, that can oftentimes set us up for a worse wildfire season. So I'm just saying, Mother Nature, please bring us some of those stretches like what we had, what was that, a few weeks ago, where it was like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, it was chilly and rainy, because we just need more stretches like that if we're not going to have a bad wildfire season.
Yeah, it's interesting to see what will happen. But I know next week, you know, there's not much popping up on the models per se, but it is interesting to me at least. It seems like we have some cooler air trying to wedge in a little bit from the north. And around Tuesday, maybe you get a little frontal system that kind of cuts by. That might surprise with some cooler, drizzlier kind of stuff. But that's about it. So we don't have any big soakers, at least for now.
Well, that can kind of transition us, Tim, into the Climate Prediction Center's winter forecast. I don't know if you and Brad had a specific day where you kind of sat down and analyzed it, but it's essentially exactly what we thought it was going to be, right? Warmer than normal, drier than normal because of the La Nina setup. And again, when we look at those, you know, winters, it's really all about the fact that it's a severe weather setup oftentimes. I believe if people have watched WCNC at least for a while, there was a situation in, I think it was 2011, where Brad was actually on air tracking a tornado chance, and it was like right by his house. And so there was like a famous moment where he was like, honey, to his wife, you know, if you and the kids are watching, you know, make sure you're in your safe place. And so it was one of those like February, March, you know, kind of earlier in the season, severe weather events. And so I just think it's a good reminder to people sometimes, especially, and you guys probably see this in the triad too. It's like every single year when we talk about like what's normal for Charlotte, I feel like we're always talking about how people are moving here, so people don't really know that we have a severe weather season and all those things. So I think it like behooves us to keep talking about like the norms, right? So people know what to expect, especially if it's their first winter or their first La Nina winter or their first March and April, and they're just not used to it.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how. It's always interesting to see how the winter plays out. All anybody cares about is snow. But just apart from
true.
that, is, we're entering in a what you would call a weak La Nina. It's not a super strong one, but similar to last year, we have kind of a weak La Nina currently. A lot of the longer range models for what we call ENSO, whether it's La Nina or El Nino, a lot of the longer range ones are starting to transition us out of La Nina, getting into the early part of next year. Some of them may be as early as February or March. So it'll be interesting to see if we go toward a La Nada or a neutral state or even a El Nino. Like, what does that have to do with, that end of winter type of setup? So it's interesting. I think maybe a faster start to winter than usual in terms of cold could happen, and then maybe you get a little bit out of that toward the end of things.
Tim, I actually can't believe I forgot I wanted to talk to you about this, but the surprise burst of snow, I missed it because I was in Florida. Did you guys get snow in Greensboro?
Gosh, so that was a wild day. So this was back, I guess it was Monday afternoon.
Yeah.
Must have
Monday.
been Monday. Yeah, it was. So this is.
I know it's been a crazy week.
Times
Northern
I can count
Lights,
on my hand.
snow. Yeah.
I can't remember too many occasions that Charlotte gets blitzed with some snowfall and we don't. But this was one of them. So that burst of snow showers really was a bit more locally focused on the southern Piedmont rather than the northern Piedmont. And so we didn't get many flurries up this way. We didn't get any accumulation, certainly. But that line, it was from Charlotte where it started, moved its way down all the way to the coastal areas. So like Myrtle Beach, Wilmington, Fayetteville, upstate South Carolina. I mean, wacky stuff for them to get it, and not much of anything up here apart from some cosmetic flurries. But hey, anything on November 10th is a headline. It is on the marquee. It is a big deal, of course, but just super strange to see this time of year to have anything of note, let alone accumulation. Some of the accumulation I saw in the Charlotte area was impressive.
Yeah, and I think it's just so funny, too, because it came on the same week where it was like 77 degrees over the weekend, right? And then we saw the quick burst of snow. And then we get 2 nights of the Northern Lights. It was like, what a week. What a week in the Carolinas. What I thought was cool, and I don't know if you saw this, but on Tuesday after the event, you can always count on Brad to do something like this. So Brad had AI run a simulation based on the winters that we've had in early season snow to try to see if it can correlate to a snowier winter. And so I think Jeb or Sean has that up for us, which I just thought this is an interesting thing to note. Oftentimes when we do these, the answer is no. It's like what is the old wives' tale about 10 days of thunder or something like that before something.
Oh, sure. Yeah. If it thunders in winter, you get snow in 10 days.
Yeah, so it's normally some of these things, like we talked about with the red sky in the morning a few weeks ago, normally some of those old wives' tales or sayings about weather and climate have some kind of actual true origination, somewhere, even if it's not necessarily meteorologically accurate.
Yeah.
But the answer to this one is the correlation is low. Just because you see a little burst of snow in November does not mean that you're going to be able to accurately forecast 3 months from now. But I thought it was a fun little something. So
it's a good question to ask. A lot of people just ask it naturally, or you might assume naturally, oh my gosh, if we're already having a 28-degree morning, we're already having flurries, what are we in for over the next couple of months? That's a natural thing to think. But we have the same questions that come up in May if we get 3 90-degree days or something. Oh gosh, it's going to be a bad summer. No, doesn't matter. I mean, actually, a lot of times there's not a big correlation to those things. Like Brad said, or like the graphic said there are bigger impacts to the overall climate pattern. And so for this winter, you might rather look at the La Nina phase or the other teleconnections that we'll explain a lot more on Tuesday of next week when we go into the outlook. Believe it or not, there might be a bigger role to play with is it snowy in Russia right now than did it flurry in Charlotte on Tuesday. Those things can play a role globally. Whereas the flurries locally on a day or two might not have long-lasting implications. But it's interesting to see the percentage. It also kind of looks to be the opposite, that it actually means a less snowy winter.
Yeah, that's true. What is it? What did it say? It said early season snow is usually fluky, which I don't know if that's a word, but I'm so excited for y'all's winter weather outlook. That's going to be so fun. I decided that I was going to take it upon myself to shift my schedule later in the day just so I could be here for the big reveal because I'm just going to be sitting in the corner because I always think it's fun. But you brought up a really good point that I just wanted to circle back to about the 90s in May. Remember this last year? It was cool at the end of May and early June. So how could we have ever known if that was the case, right? That it was going to be the first time that either of our cities saw 100 degrees in a decade. So it was just it would have been impossible to know that.
Yeah. Don't drop never make too big of conclusions out of something. Sometimes the weather for that day or the weather for 2 days, it's just the weather for those 2 days. I mean, like this week, you could take those 2 days out of our weather and it's a really warm week. But we had that 2-day winter that we told you about for like a week, and now we're going back to the 70s for the second weekend in a row.
Yeah. 77, basically bookending our Sundays, but in between that we had a high of 48. So it's there's no correlation there. Tim, I'm so excited for Tuesday. I'm so excited for the big reveal of y'all's winter weather outlooks. Is there any kind of tease you can give us?
It's interesting.
Other than Russia?
Well, I think Russia. It's always about Russia. Russia weather experts.
Exactly.
We're looking globally, right? So I do think, it is interesting when you look at these things. We tend to look at the globe to get clues about what weather we could have. And I do think that this year there are kind of some mixed signals. Some signals that would point you to saying, gosh, we might have better chances for cold and snow. And then there are others that are pointing the other way. So it's kind of, resolving those different mixed signals all in a warmer world. It's 2025 where we also always factor in climate change into our forecasts too. It'll be interesting. I do think that there's hope for snow lovers. And whenever people ask me, are we going to get snow this year? I say we almost always do. You might not remember it because you only remember the big ones, but almost every year we get snow. There's only a couple on record without much significance, some of them in recent years. But I think there's enough reasons for hope, especially early on this year. But we'll talk more about that on Tuesday.
Well, we're really looking forward to it. Cannot wait. Tomorrow, we're also going to have a really fun show as well. We're going to talk to Climate Central about the fact that they're picking up the billion-dollar disasters, that used to be done by NCEI. And so that will be a fun little show there. And we'll be ending a wild week of weather with the Northern Lights, snow, and multiple days with high temperatures in the upper 70s. So, Tim... If you don't have anything else to add, I guess we're getting close to the end of the show.
We'll see you tomorrow. Have a good night. Enjoy the weather.
You have a good night, Tim Buckley.